Dover, Florida, a suburb of Tampa, is the home base of puppet builder and actress, dancer Holli Rubin. But she finds her home changing from day to day as she tours with the Bits and Pieces Puppet Theater across the United States and around the world.
Life on the road, what a lot of fun it is. I never get tired of it. It's probably because I feel like I'm a sightseer, I'm a tourist through life. Wherever we go, you see something new.
As artistic director and performer with the Giant Puppet Company, Holli's work has enlivened children everywhere for the past 21 years.
My first recollection of being a performer was probably my first thoughts of being alive. But I really do remember when my parents' friends would come over and I would dance for them. And I would not just dance in the living room, I would dance up the stairway and down the stairway and have costume pieces. And I would do one side of Swan Lake, and then I would want to do the other side of the album. So of course my parents gave me dancing lessons at 3 years old. And I danced through my whole life. I was in the Fort Lauderdale Civic Ballet, and I loved to dance. But I always knew dancing wasn't the only thing for me because almost everyone I danced for said, why do you make faces when you dance? A dancer dances with their whole body, and look what you're doing. You're telling the whole story with your face. So I knew that eventually I would work with theater. Now in Fort Lauderdale, where I grew up, there was a wonderful arts community on Las Olas Boulevard, and there were wonderful sculpture classes and painting classes. So as I was even in first or second grade, I took art classes, and I got a chance to work with clay and with paints and find out about drawing, and it was a wonderful thing, and it was something I always enjoyed doing. So I could do the dance and I could do the theater, but along the way, my hobby was painting and drawing and doing all that hands-on sort of thing. It was great to get paint all over you. That was always a thrill to me. Well, the puppets have to be created. That's the first part. That's my job. If it's an animal character, I'll find out what that animal really looks like, and I use that as a point of departure, and I do depart from it. And then if I look for pictures out of children's books or pictures out of books that might have a facial characteristic I like, a certain smile, a certain eyebrow, a certain ear, perhaps I'm making an animal puppet, and I find a human picture that has the right expression, I just put that right in there. And so I make a collage of all these different little pictures that have something about them that will inspire me to create the character. And then I take out my clay. And I have pounds and pounds of clay. But I have to make an armature. And I use styrofoam and I stick it on pieces of metal to get a general shape because a lion face is long and thin or a human face will be round. So you've got to stick all of that together. And you know, sometimes you get inspired because the styrofoam comes out a certain way and it makes the head tilt a certain way or head that way. And then you learn something else about the character. Then you pile that clay on there and you really work until your hands are burning up, and they actually help to make the clay. It's modeling clay and it models the clay. And as you're doing it, the character changes and shifts. And then you have to keep turning it because you want all your facial characteristics to go back, because the kids don't just see the puppets from the front, they see it in the back, so you have to keep turning it and spinning it and finding how to bring that character to life no matter which direction. And in puppetry, it's wonderful because you want this side to be maybe a little happier and this side to be a little crueler, so that when the character moves, it has a little different personality, whichever way it goes. The whole thing is covered with this material. Nowadays, there's many different materials you can use, but the name when I started was Celastic, so I still call all the materials Celastic. When it's finally dry, you cut it and you take it off of this mold, and it's a positive mold, and that's very exciting because when you pop it off, the character's alive. It just comes right off at you, and you still have the clay too, which is kind of neat to see what's left, and you reassemble the two pieces of the head. And that's when the work on putting in the moving parts begins, the cross beams, the part that's going to make the puppet stand up on its backpack. And once we get that situated, then usually that's when we start putting on that plastic wood. We call it plastic wood soup. It's plastic wood, acetone, and baby powder. And it's a special formula. And you mix it all up and you put it all over the head. And when it dries, you begin sanding it. And the sanding surface, if you have a person, you want that nice, smooth, fleshy quality. If it's an animal, it doesn't matter so much. Sometimes you add fabric. By the time you get it sanded, you're ready to start to paint. And that is the part that I really enjoy, because that goes back to your theater training and putting on makeup and doing clown makeup and all, because I paint with my hands. I do everything with my hands. So I'll stick a little bit of paint on and then I'll start to blend it, just like a makeup artist would do a face. And sometimes you'll blend it and make it look smooth. Sometimes you'll decide you're going to go in little dots everywhere and make it look all pointillism and that sort of thing. It just all depends on what your mood is, and then that's when you give it its color. Then it's fun to wig, put fabric on. And before you know it, you have a character that has as much life as the person who created it.
That's what you think. Listen to this. It's lucky, you know, to work and not fret. The harder I work, the luckier I get. I store up food inside my nest so my family is safe and I can get a rest. Rest. We'll eat kernels of corn, drink dandelion shakes, through milk pods we will sip from goblets of grapes. It's lucky, you know, to work and not fret. The harder I work, the luckier I get.
Whoa! I never worry. I never cry. Life is great, like pie in the sky. There's just one thing a dinosaur won't do. I won't work today for tomorrow's goo. Ha ha ha! Don't worry, be happy. Ha ha ha!
So we did the Ballad of Jose Gaspar as our first giant show. So that's when we started to work with talented set designers to create a whole picture, because no longer did we have a little square with a puppet box. We now had to fill the whole proscenium with our show. And that started the beginning of our giant productions and the success of our company, when we could come to a theater, we could fill their stage, no matter what size, with this big spectacle, this big musical. And that kind of set what we did in children's theater with the giants.